So I thought we'd look at a psalm again this week. I know not a lot of you were able to make it last week, but um, just the traditional readings I was looking through, and I just happened to get one of my all-time favorites. So I will be a little self-indulgent, but it's a good one. Just to remind us, I think in this community, there's not a person who doesn't have things to teach, and there's not a person who doesn't have things to learn. So these are open discussion. Disagree with me, throw out questions, whatever. I'm just hosting a conversation because I think all of you are very much worth learning from. So I'm going to look at Psalm number 1. And I'm in a bit of an odd translation, so just roll with it if you're following along on your phone or whatever. Blessed the one who is not walked in the wicked's counsel, nor in the way of offenders has stood, nor in the session of scoffers has sat, but the Lord's teaching is his desire and delight. In his teaching he murmurs day and night. And he shall be like a tree planted by streams of water, that bears its fruit in its season, and its leaf does not wither, and in all he does he prospers. Not so the wicked, but like chaff that the wind drives away. Therefore the wicked will not stand up in judgment, nor offenders in the band of the righteous. For the Lord knows the way of the righteous, but the way of the wicked is lost. So this psalm is one that the imagery and the familiarity for many of us is, I think, so strong it can be a little careful we don't slip into a cliche and lose the meaning of it. So to start us out, I thought I would look up some kind of cliches this week, see if you guys know the one. The funniest one I thought I found was, do you guys know the phrase, let the cat out of the bag? Does anyone know what that's a reference to? I had no idea. I'm like, what does that actually even mean? Why is a cat in a bag? So apparently, there was a point in time where people would on the street, if you need to buy meat for your meal or whatever, you'd go to these guys who just had a cart full of pigs, and they would put them in bags. So if you said, I need 10 pigs or whatever, they just hand you these 10 like squirming bags, and you take them to the manor house and slaughter them yourself or whatever. But a common kind of hustle, fraud, whatever, was you wouldn't give them all, everyone wouldn't be a pig. You'd go catch stray cats and throw a few of them in. So you get a pig or two, but then there's a bunch of cats. So letting the cat out of the bag was the jig is up, right? Which I also don't know what that means, so I should have looked that one up. But the idea, I have no idea what that story is, but apparently they were putting cats in bags. And so the cat out of the bag means you got caught. You paid for a pig, but it's actually a cat, so no one's going to do business with you anymore. And so just those odd phrases, these things that we can be overly familiar with and lose their meaning. There's a couple of them kind of jammed into this psalm. And that's true of people all throughout history. There's several of the big images in here are almost cliches. They get used so much in both the Old Testament and teaching of the New. So I think one of the things we need to do in digging at familiar pieces of the Bible is figure out again, okay, what did this actually mean? How can this actually be helpful to us now? So we'll run into one of them right away, right in verse 1. But I want to talk first about this very first term. Depending on your translation, you can get blessed or blessed or happy. This term is one that basically is connotating it can be joy, it can be happiness, but it's just things are right with the world. And biblically, it's beyond a feeling, right? Happy, I think, is one, and that's why a lot of translations will shy away from saying the word happy, which is a legit, because just happy, I feel good, I got a good lotto ticket, or the sun's shining, right? Happy, it's good. But people also shy away from blessed because it just sounds so spiritual, right? It sounds like the Beatitudes. Well, blessed are those. We don't say that word anywhere. But the important thing about this idea is it includes both. It's an everyday, normal, like you're just having a good day. That counts as blessed. But it also has a spiritual aspect. It includes God's presence. It's something that's kind of beyond our feelings. It's not just happy, right? It is also something, like I said, that includes the everyday, but it's very specific in the Psalms, particularly that it's always a gift. Blessedness is not something earned. It is an expression of God's love. We are blessed because God is near, and He wants us to have enough food. He wants us to have shelter. He wants us to be whole and comfortable. Those things are not bad things in of themselves, right? They are expressions of God's love. They are a gift. This sense of wholeness, this sense of goodness and okayness that is beyond our circumstances. Because there's a lot of time the Bible is going to say we are blessed. You know, Jesus really puts the screws down on that one, right? We are blessed when we are persecuted. We are blessed when we're the peacemakers and misunderstood, for instance. That idea is running here. Blessedness, God's present, this gift, the expression of his love, is expressed when, and that's kind of the rest of the psalm. So, blessed is the one who has not walked in the wicked's counsel, nor in the way of offenders has stood, nor in the session of scoffers has sat. And so this idea of walking a path, the idea of like going on a pilgrimage, a journey of spiritual faith, this is another of those cliches. It is all over the Old Testament. It's one of the favorite ways of talking about kind of wisdom. It's one of the favorite ways of talking about the psalm. I think probably our easiest way to get at this is maybe that Robert Frost poem many of us were forced to memorize in high school, right? But the Deuteronomy uses this image, the Psalms do. It's you stand here and you're at a path. You got a choice that way, you got a choice that way. Deuteronomy puts it very bluntly. Okay, that way goes to death, that way goes to life. Oh man, I guess I'll go this way, right? And so it's playing on that image, and it's going to kind of go back and forth on those, like, okay, when you're standing there and you put it that bluntly, it should be super obvious, right? Let's go the life way, not the death way. And yet it's going to tease out as well. Blessedness comes from God's way. It comes from God's path. But it isn't as obvious as it is if we look at it in that poem, right? And so here's the first one. You want to know what the blessed one is? The way of being, the path that you're on? Well, who you're associating with is one of the easiest ways to look at it. It's not someone who's walked in the wicked's counsel. So taking their advice, taking their values, taking their way of doing things. Sure is a good thing none of us ever get influenced by evil around us, right? We're far too spiritual for that. Blessedness is not walking in that path of death the other way, nor in the way of offenders has stood. I think the image there is just being around them as well. We're taking their ideas in, we're just hanging around, seeing how it goes. And I was really interested in this last one. The word's a goofy one, but it's nor in the session or among or working with scoffers. What on earth is a scoffer? And so I looked that one up. Nobody knows how to translate it because we just don't use the word in English very well. But it basically is someone who's a know-it-all. Someone who can't be taught because they already know the answers. I think it's the Pharisees, right? In the New Testament. They couldn't hear what Jesus had to say. They couldn't follow God's way because they already knew the answers. They didn't need him. They don't need the gift of blessedness. They already earned it. They can't connect and be learned. And there's this kind of theme of this same foolishness here. So who are we not hanging out with? You know, offenders, the wicked, like obvious sinners, right? There's like those ones you can shake your finger at really easily. Oh, they're such a terrible person. They were CEO of a company that spilled oil in the Gulf and then tried to cover it up. You know, they have blatant drinking problem or some obvious sexual sin, whatever. Like the stuff we like to pick on. Those people are easy. But the one that they really go after in this psalm is the fool. The person who's too smart to hear God's ways. They know better. They're probably a lot better at hiding the darkness in their lives, right? Those are the ones you really got to watch out for. Those are the ones you got to really make sure you are not. Don't walk in their ways is where it starts. So what's the other path? Rather than hanging around all these people, hiding the fact, knowing all the answers, the Lord's teaching is his desire or delight. And so teaching there is the word Torah. A lot of older translations use law. Probably not the best translation just because we have such a strong connotation with what the law is. Like, here's the stuff you do, here's the line. Like, I'm legal, I'm not legal, right? We just have a strong line. The idea of Torah in the Old Testament, the idea that they're going here, the teaching is much more like God is present, God is revealing. It's like showing someone the ropes, right? Like when you show up and you're doing that training, you always want that trainer who like knows what they're doing. And you're, okay, here's the tricks. Make sure you do this. Make sure you do this. Like a good mentor is the idea. God here is teaching us. He's showing us the ropes of blessedness, of prosperity, of the life the way it's meant to be. Just come and see. And one of the comments I read this week that I really liked was they said, we need to be less afraid of this word law and this way of thinking. We need to rediscover the Old Testament just delight and desire to seek out God's will. There just seems to be this sense of joy of figuring out God is not hidden, God is not far away, God is inviting us on this path of life, right? God's teaching, God's way of being is delight. It's not just knowledge, it's not just knowing the answers, right? Think about when you're really excited about something, or when you know someone who's really jazzed about a new hobby or something. You know, they can pour hours into it. They can check every website. They can go get the books. You can get so excited. I think of my friend Mike when he first got into home brewing, and now any other habit. You had this great phrase one time. You're like, yeah, anything I'm into, I'm just going to dig in so deep. I can only have one hobby at a time. I just don't have the time and the energy for something else, right? And that's the desire right there. Is like we're going to be so jazzed about life and God's way of doing things that it's not going to be just this head knowledge. It's not this slog of, I gotta go read some more. Like it's fun. You're excited about it. It's interesting. That's the place I think we want to get back to in this. This is a person who says the Lord's teachings, the Lord's way of being, the things he has for us, him showing us the rope. It's our delight. It's something that interests us and we keep digging into. And so his, again, teaching, they murmur day and night. It's a very literal translation. Murmur is, of course, because when you're memorizing something, you say it out loud, right? It's only a pretty recent phenomenon that we read to ourselves quietly. You would have read out loud and said it. And the idea is, and we're trying to memorize something, right? Like I used to do theater. When you're walking around, you're like, okay, da-da-da, you're singing, da-da-da-da-da. And you start over again. You're memorizing it. Meditation is another kind of classic word on that. It's not just memorizing, it's not just saying that, but murmuring, gnawing is another image I like. Imagine a dog with a bone, right? They are not going to let that thing go until they've gotten every last little splinter of marrow or whatever out of there, right? Is that the way? We're so excited about this thing, we're just gnawing on it. We're murmuring on it, we're working at it day and night because we know what this thing is. It's life, it's light to us. Anyway. This person is going to be like a tree planted by streams of water that bears its fruit in its season, and its leaf does not wither, and in all it does they prosper. Here's another one of those images that has become almost cliche. There's like 5 or 6 other places it gets used in the Bible. It's such a great image of what's going on the outside, especially remember this was written in the desert. And so we've got scorching winds, we've got dry heat, and then we've got this tree that is just loving life. And you're like, what is going on with that thing? Well, its roots are down in the water. It's found a stream. And so no matter what the circumstances about its life are, it's receiving life from something deeper. It's got a secret, it's got access to it, right? What a great image. Again, Bible's really annoying in making sure we're not saying it's not because the conditions are good. It's rainy, it's nice out, the tree looks really good. It's because its roots are going to the right source of water. It can be as hot as it wants. If the wind can come through and blast this thing, and it's going to be thriving, it's going to be bringing forth fruit in its season. Not all the time. That's not the way we're looking at prosperity. It is going to thrive in its correct season. So here's the path thing again. But not so the wicked, right? There's another path. Not so those who are doing things their own way. They are going to be like chaff that the wind drives away. And therefore they're not going to stand up to a judgment, and they're going to be offenders in the band of the righteous. And so there's another contrast there. You've got this thriving on one side, when you're connected to the source, to the water. And the other image is something that is withered. It can't hold its own. The wind comes, it knocks it down and blows it away. We've got something that is rooted, that can handle a storm because it's strong. It's reaching down in. Versus something that when the wind comes, blows it away. It's chaff. It's the little bits of the grain that's so light, there's nothing there and it's gone, right? So it's not just the path. Do we want life or death? Do we want blessedness or emptiness? Do we want rootedness? Or do we want to get blown by every whim, every circumstance of our life? And the very last, I think, is such a beautiful phrase. Because the Lord knows the way of the righteous, but the way of the wicked is lost. Would we rather be known by God? Or would we rather seek, oblivion, for lack of a better word? The things we're about, those things we've done with our life and accomplished, are they going to blow away because they really weren't worth anything? Or would we prefer the knowledge, the intimate knowledge that God knows us and sees our hearts and says, yeah, there's things worth preserving here. There's things worth continuing on, things that are kept in me. He says, God knows their ways. Versus the way of the wicked, which is lost. So hopefully there wasn't anything in there that was too shocking or new to you. But I think it's an important reminder that I just don't think anyone sets out saying, yeah, the oblivion and withering, and that's what I want my life to look like, right? We're all looking for prosperity. So why do so many lives look like something else? Why do we find lack of prosperity in our own lives and the lives of people around us? When we've got it looks pretty easy there, right?